Good day, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And I'm Delos Santos. Here are today's top stories. The Marcos administration sells at least $2 billion in dollar-denominated bonds in its global debt market debut. The sale is expected to ease pressures on the weakening peso.
Now, the Bangko Sentral says it is ready to take further actions to arrest inflation as the consumer price index accelerated to its highest level in almost 4 years.
And what has President during his first 100 days in office? He says his administration has managed to find the best and the brightest officials to help run the government.
And the Customs Bureau exceeds its collection target for the 9th straight month in September. We begin our broadcast with the Marcos Jr. administration debuting in the international debt market through a multi-tranche dollar-denominated bond offering. Now, Bloomberg reports that the government sold $2 billion in the three-part dollar bond offering. The borrowing plan sought to raise at least $500 million through the issuance of bonds with tenors of 5 years and 10.5 years, as well as a 25-year green or sustainability bond. Proceeds of the bonds with financing and for climate change and sustainable development efforts. The sale is seen to boost the supply of dollars in the local market and may ease pressures on the peso, which recently slumped to another all-time low. This is the second dollar-denominated offering for 2022 and the first under President Bongbong Marcos. Now, Finance Chief Ben Diokno earlier said that 69% of the current debt stock was sourced locally. He says the government aims to increase this to 75% this year to minimize the foreign exchange risks.
The Bangko Sentral eyes further policy actions to combat the rising prices of goods in the country. This after inflation accelerated to 6.9% in September, bringing the year-to-date average to 5.1%. The BSP says it is ready to tighten further to bring inflation back to its target of 2 to 4%. The central bank also urges for timely implementation of non-government interventions to tame commodity prices. Meanwhile, in an interview with Businessworld Live, China Bank Chief Economist Dominic Velasquez says inflation may peak in October.
We think it will peak around October by more than 7% due to what was mentioned earlier in your program. Electricity prices might increase in October, and you also have this new round of transport price increases.
Economists also say the further rise in prices of goods could dampen economic recovery as consumers are forced to dip into their savings.
Throughout the pandemic, nahihirapan na po yung mga consumers natin, unfortunately, kasi nga walang trabaho. So bumababa na yung savings, and now we run into high inflation. It's going to be a very challenging time for the economy. As consumers as well, we can look for other avenues to cut back and maybe save for a rainy day. And ito na talaga ang pinaka-rainy day siguro.
Now, as inflation zoomed past its highest level since October 2018 at 6.9%, how is this affecting the export sector? And does this in any way offset gains from the peso's weakness? Let's get insights from the President of the Philippine Exporters Confederation and the President of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, Sergio Ortiz-Luis. Good day, Sir Luis. Thank you for joining us today. Like what we reported earlier, again, inflation sizzling to 6.9%. How has that affected the export sector? Does this mean higher cost of inputs and materials? And does that in any way offset any gains that you may have made due to the peso's depreciation?
Well, good morning also, Jester and Danie. We in the past we have had some spikes in inflation also, and some time ago we commissioned studies regarding inflation. What can a country like ours, economy like ours, can afford? No?
Mm-hmm.
It turned out that 5% is for a growing economy like us is just about okay, no?
Mm-hmm.
And even as high as 8% is very manageable. You know, the Bangko Sentral has enough weapon in their arsenal to be able to temper this. Except that when you try to temper inflation, you try to hike the interest rates, and that is difficult for our companies because they cannot borrow. It makes it difficult. So long as it doesn't run away that much, I think it's very manageable. Eventually, I think after these temporary problems like the Ukraine conflict and this which affects the fuel and even our imports of prime commodities, I think it will normalize eventually.
Sir, has the peso weakness, can you give some figures, can you nuances a bit on how the peso's weakness has impacted the export sector, hopefully positively, and whether this offsets, like you mentioned, the other issues that have been hounding the industry, like increase in commodity prices, the inflation issue there. Has this in any way been a net positive?
A lot of people are bothered about the exchange rate, no? And I agree definitely with the Bangko Central that so long as it does not jump very widely, and that is okay. That's when, there is a misconception that we are the only ones having this depreciation of our currency. There is a lot of countries here, Japan, Taiwan, North Korea, they're having a bigger depreciation than us. And we're just tracking them actually. So you can imagine if we don't, how will we trade? How will be our export? How competitive can we be? And we will certainly not be competitive if that is the case. So there is also a misconception that exchange rate plays a very big factor in our export. It does play, and it gives us our competitiveness at the moment, no. And but they actually been in the past, when you say strong republic, strong peso, that is no longer true. That is true in the 50s, in the 60s, or even the 70s. But now, there are 12 million OFWs officially listed, and I think there can even be as much as 18 million that are remitting money to us. No, you multiply that by a family of 5 who are benefiting from the strong dollar, and you will realize, without including the exporters, the BPOs, the tourism industry, you will realize that majority of our people are now dependent on dollars rather than on peso. So they profit if the exchanges. If I remember correctly, the OFW has been remitting about $40 billion a year now, and for every peso increase change 1 peso, that means 40 billion pesos are given to our OFWs, and they profit from it. That goes to our economy also. I noticed in the 79, when we had a crisis, many of the OFWs who were buying properties, were buying little business here and there, and even those who are putting their children to school decreased. And now they're now back again, and so the who are suffering from a weak peso? Well, the importers.
Correct.
Okay. And the importers, part of that also are exporters. Like for instance, the garments and the electronics sector, they import 60 to 70% of the raw materials. The garments was all material.
Sir, so sorry to interrupt. More to your point, I wanted to ask, sir, has the demand for these things, especially with the softening global outlook, there's recession about to happen in the US, has the demand for our services, which we are exporting, not just manufacturing, not just electronics, but even the need for OFWs, has that been increasing?
Oh yes, definitely. Our export after the pandemic, definitely we lost a lot. That we are trying to slowly recover. Surely, but it's not at the pace that you would like it to be, but it's surely recovering. And the bigger grower really is the services and the electronics.
Now, Now, at the same time, we are expecting employment figures to come out later in the day. What are your projections here? Do you expect that to improve further? That, of course, eased back in July to 5.2%. Do you expect that to continue to improve, or will the high interest rate environment somehow weaken again the labor force?
Well, I think we're people tends to exaggerate the exchange rate, the interest rate, unemployment. No,
Okay.
companies are looking. There are other things that the companies are looking at. No, so you we realize that 90% of our companies are micro. Many of them, 50% of them actually closed down during the pandemic height. No, they're beginning to open now. What they need is really credit, and I think there is credit, and we're working for credit that they can afford. No, which will not be affected by for at least for the micro, and businesses will borrow depending on the requirements. So employment will continuously increase. No, and as these companies, because of uh, the risk that is no, and the alert levels have been being decreased, so companies are beginning to open, especially what we call the non-essentials, which are basically tourism, hotels, restaurants. These are the ones that are the biggest gainers. There are also other, we're now trying to look at the mining industry, which is a low-hanging fruit that we have not taken advantage of, and I think we are now beginning to realize that there are responsible miners are available that can do this, and therefore this will increase our employment also a lot.
Sir, can you say with conviction that the worst is over in terms of unemployment, underemployment, at least related to the pandemic situation as well as for the export situation, sir?
I think I can reasonably assume that unless something else like another conflict like Ukraine comes up, no, which disturb the supply chain. But I think slowly but surely we are now regaining our employment and even doubling it at most of the time. Even us, the private sector, together with we embarked last year in a 1 million job incremental jobs, no, and we did not meet that in December last year, the 1 million that we did, but we did meet it because of the alert level that was increased last August. So but we met it in the first quarter of this year, and we during the Labor Day we signed an agreement with most of the sector, the manufacturing, the safety, the tourism, DOLE, DTI. We again signed a commitment that we will not produce another incremental job of 1 million this year. And I think we're doing that very well now.
All right, so on the way to meet those targets, and hopefully worse is over. That's according to Sergio Ortiz-Luis, President of Philexport and ECOP. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much also.
Now let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. Bank's non-performing loan ratio falls to its lowest level in almost 2 years.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel.
Now, a functional government with the best and brightest officials. That's what President Marcos said his administration has achieved during its 100 days in office. Speaking before the Manila Overseas Press Club, President Marcos said that 100 days into his 6-year term, he was able to put together a government that is driven to reach economic targets. The president also touted his visits to ASEAN countries like Singapore and Indonesia, saying these allowed him to show the world where the Philippines is headed economically.
I think what we have managed to do in the first 100 days is put together a government which is functional and which has a very, very good idea of what we are targeting in terms of strict economic targets, for example, in terms of the numbers of growth, the numbers of our different measures. We bring the best and the brightest, and we do not look at color in terms of political color. I think we have done that.
To reach economic targets, President Marcos said his government has already started to address supply issues, specifically on sugar and fertilizer, by as early as his first 50 days in office. He says his government is also looking into non-traditional sources of these commodities like Russia.
Senator Kit just brought up also this foreign policy between Ukraine and Russia. And we take a very balanced view, because the truth of the matter is we may have to deal with Russia for fuel, for fertilizer.
The Customs Bureau exceeded its collection target for a 9th straight month in September. The agency said its September collections reached 79.5 billion pesos, surpassing its 62 billion peso target by over 28%. The agency attributes this to improved collection performance as well as higher duties on oil. The Bureau is urging all of its offices and collection districts to sustain its performance throughout the year by taking advantage of its modernization programs and the reform initiatives of the Marcos administration.
President Bongbong Marcos reiterated that the climate change agenda remains as one of the priorities of his administration. Now, during the Department of Environment and Natural Resources multi-stakeholder forum, the president assured the public of his administration's commitment to addressing climate change. The president also hopes that the forum would provide some direction in efficient use of the country's natural resources. President Marcos also rallied for unity in mitigating the effects of climate change, as the country still has a long way to go in achieving this goal.
As your president, I assure you that our environment and our country's resiliency and adaptation to the new normals of climate change are on top of the national agenda. In this collective fight, we are not soldiers, we are stewards. There will be no weapons to use, only behaviors and practices to improve upon.
Soured loans held by banks fell to a 6th straight month in August, bringing the non-performing loan ratio to a 23-month low. BSP data shows that the banking sector's gross NPL ratio inched down to 3.53% as of end August from the 3.57% the month before. This is also lower than the 4.51% recorded in the same month last year. August NPL ratio was the lowest in 23 months or since the 3.51% in September 2020. The central bank attributes the improvement to the continued reopening of the economy. But economists admit that the decline in NPLs may slow in the coming months due to recent rate hikes by the BSP.
North Star Meat Merchants is now eyeing foreign investors after deferring its initial public offering. The meat retailer says it decided to put off its IPO to create more value for investors. Now, with more projects in its pipeline, North Star says it has seen more foreign and private equity interest. Last June, the company shelved its 4.5 billion peso maiden offering, citing market volatility and inflationary pressures. And while it has no target date for the refiling of the IPO, North Star assures it will push through in the long term.
And those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. We are One News, all sides, all the time. But don't go away. We'll give you the latest on the local bourse when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
And you're still watching Business World Live as foreigners bought back into the local market. You have OPEC production cuts sending jitters. What's the status?
Exactly, Jess. So on the one hand, the OPEC cuts are meant to not have too much oil supply because of the fact that they're anticipating a global slowdown and recession in terms of demand. But that might bring back prices of oil yet again, and that shook markets already yesterday. You had the S&P 500 dropping, European blue chips as well. The cut will be 2 million barrels cut, and the oil benchmark over the US hit a 3-month high. And if you take a look at how we are performing, following suit, they're back below 6,000 levels after having gone back up there yesterday. So we're down by 0.1%. Let's take a quick peek at our movers here for the morning, Jess. If anyone is sitting out the sell-off, and you do see a few bright spots here: Converge, Alliance Global and Wilcon leading the charge, as well, but Mondenisan and Aboitiz Equity being sold off, Jess. Now, just a quick peek on the peso here. That is actually strengthened on the back quickly of that dollar bond sale, the first in President BBM's tenure, Jess.
Okay, so there you have it. Again, a bit of a strengthening here on the peso. That's it for today, October 6, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.